It's that time again. Time for Game of the Year discussions and my Game of the Year video. Hello guys, welcome to my new GOTY list video for 2023. It's that time of the year again where I talk about the best games that have come out in 2023. For today's video, I'm going to do my top 10 most best games of 2023. It's my own personal list. And what is your favorite game of this year? Let me know in the comment section down below and we can discuss that. So let's get right into this, because this year has been absolutely stacked with games and very competitive. This year has been one of the most difficult years for me to place games in which order for this list I'm going to talk about, because this list is so competitive, guys. I will tell you, half a year ago when I started basically making this list, I had like 4 different games on this top 10 and they are now all out because it's so competitive. And I will talk a little bit about also honorable mentions that did not make the list as well. Let's first start off with the rules that I do every year. So the first most important rule for my Game of the Year video is the game needs to be released in 2023. That is kind of obvious. I cannot put a game from 2022 on here. Every game that has been released from January up until December 2023 is eligible for this list. The second rule, no remasters allowed. But I make an exception for remakes and reboots. So what do I mean with remasters? Actual games that only upscale in, shall I say, resolution or FPS. Those games are not allowed for this list. You have to have some change in the story or some change in the gameplay. So as an example, I will give you guys an example. Dead Space Remake. That is allowed on this list because it's basically a whole new game. The third last rule that we will talk about is in fact that I need to have played the game. That's kind of obvious because it's my own list, of course. I cannot put a game on here that someone else has played but I haven't. A very big example is Baldur's Gate 3. I cannot put Baldur's Gate 3 on this list because I have only played, I think, like only the beginning hours. I've started playing it, but I haven't played anything near enough for Baldur's Gate 3 to be on this list. So sorry for all the Baldur's Gate 3 fans. Those are all the rules. Let's go quickly to honorable mentions that I would want to talk about that did not make the list slightly. There are 4 games in particular that I want to talk about. First one is Atomic Heart, which is a 8 out of 10. I also have a review for that. Every game that has a review, I will put that in the description down below for you guys to see my more in-depth opinion. Atomic Heart was a very good game. It's a little bit like a Russian kind of version of BioShock. And it has flaws, certainly, but I really enjoyed it with the story. But it was not good enough to hold in the top 10. Another game that I really liked, Like a Dragon Gaiden. It's basically a prequel for Infinite Wealth. What happened to Kiryu basically after Yakuza 6. And they explained that in Like a Dragon Gaiden. And it's basically kind of a prequel thing for Infinite Wealth. I really liked the game, especially on the story front. I haven't done a review for it. I promised I would have, but I'm just so tired for this year to do reviews. I've done a lot of reviews already, so I skipped it for review, and it also didn't make the list, but I rated it a 8.5 out of 10 if you are interested. Then Hi-Fi Rush is a great Xbox exclusive that you can play. It's a rhythm action game where you have to beat the enemies on the rhythm of the music, shall I say. It's a very unique game because the whole world is basically made to see the rhythm of the music so that you can press the buttons on the rhythm of the music as well. It had a pretty fun story, a very good gameplay. This list is so close to each other with the entries here. And it was on my top 10 list, but it just got yanked out, unfortunately, by other games. But still, Hi-Fi Rush, great Xbox exclusive. I rated that a 9 out of 10. And then on the 11th place, just out of my top 10, is Hogwarts Legacy. I really liked Hogwarts Legacy as well. I had some problems on the story front of it. There wasn't any review for Hogwarts Legacy on Ace Ice because Ben was supposed to review Hogwarts Legacy for Ace Ice, but he didn't. So that's why there isn't any review for Hogwarts Legacy, if you guys are wondering that, on Ace Ice. So those are all the honorable mentions out of the way. Let's get right into the actual top 10. Sit back, relax, enjoy, take a beverage, and let's get on with this top 10.
Where is everybody?
So the very first entry of this list is a game I already talked about in the intro, kind of a spoiler. It is in fact Dead Space Remake, which is the very first Dead Space I actually played and finished. To be fair, I have played Dead Space 3, but I haven't really played it, like just the beginning part, and then it just got onto the backlog. Sorry about that. And I have to say, this is a absolutely great start for 2023. It's one of the best horror games I've played in a very long time. There is one horror game though on this list that is higher in its rating. I really liked what I played for Dead Space, especially when it came to the gameplay, the weapons that you can use, the atmosphere on the ship as well. All the detail that went into the level design is absolutely stunning, and it's brutal, it's bloody. The sound effects are on point. It's a scary game. Also, I really loved how they switched up everything with the weapons, because every weapon in this game is very useful. Akin a little bit to Ratchet and Clank, which is a very weird comparison to make, I know. But when I played Ratchet and Clank, I think it was back in 2021 or 2022, Rift Apart, I got that also on the Game of the Year list, I think for the second place. I really liked how every weapon was unique and fun to use, and Dead Space does the exact same thing. The only problem I really have with Dead Space, especially this one, the first one, the story didn't really grab me as much as I think was supposed to be. The characters were kind of meh in my opinion, and I wasn't really a fan of how the story was going. I liked the ideas behind the story conceptually, with the cult in on the ship as well, but I think it could have been a little bit better. But still, from just a gameplay front alone, I think this game is just very strong. If you want to have very good survival horror gameplay, where you have to manage your ammo, have tense situations, want atmosphere, this game is absolutely a must play for every horror fan, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. Now, the second game I have for this list is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which is the sequel towards Jedi Fallen Order. And I have said multiple times on a lot of different videos, I am not a fan of Souls-like games. And technically, the Jedi Survivor games, or the Jedi games shall I say, are Souls-like games with Metroidvania elements as well in there. But the reason why I like this series so much is because it doesn't feel like work. A lot of Souls-like games, when I played them, they don't feel like fun to me, more like work. And there's actually a difficulty option as well. I'm going to piss off so many Souls-like fans, but I just do not give a shit. I'm also not the biggest fan of how they tell stories, especially in the Dark Souls games, because a lot of the story is environmental and hidden away in item descriptions, stuff like that. I just don't find that a compelling way to tell your story. In my opinion, when you do a video game story, the environmental storytelling should be second, not first. It should enhance the already story that's there, in my opinion. Environmental storytelling can be a very good tool to enhance your world, but it shouldn't be primary. And I know a lot of other games that are famous, like BioShock, do put environmental storytelling to the front, but BioShock still has that system of audio logs, which makes it a bit more feasible, in my opinion, next to the environmental storytelling. But that's a whole discussion for something else, I'm sorry. So Jedi Survivor is a big upgrade from the first game, also on a story perspective. The story in the first one was fine, but in my opinion they stepped it a bit up with this game, while not actually sacrificing any of the gameplay. The gameplay is still absolutely great, with the very in-depth combat system that you have in these games, the enemy variety, also powers that you get with the pacing of them, with the new techniques. It doesn't sacrifice good gameplay, in my opinion, while enriching the story. Cal Kestis, main character, he's much more improved as a character. I find him more interesting in this game, and they talk about the dark and the light side. I know that's a big trope in Star Wars, but they handled this trope much better, I've seen, in a video game to date than any other of the older Star Wars games. I know a lot of people like Knights of the Old Republic, but that was a very long time ago, and I think this game can stand toe-to-toe with something like Knights of the Old Republic in a more action front. So if you guys are fans of Souls-like games or fans of Star Wars, especially Star Wars, you need to play this game. I really like it. And Cal Kestis is a much more developed character. And also the cast was better, in my opinion, than the first game. So really take a look at this game. I know it had some problems at launch on PC when it came to the frame rate, stuff like that. But that has been mostly fixed now with updates. Check it out. I really recommend it. I gave it a 9 out of 10 as well.
Sakamoto Ryoma-san yo.
The next game we're going to talk about for this list is Like a Dragon Ishin, which is another remake. A lot of remakes have come and gone on my past year's lists, but I am a very big Yakuza fan. I've told this many times in a lot of videos, and I have been waiting a very long time, especially for Ishin, to get a Western release date, because this game was locked away only for Japan players in Japanese, and finally the whole world gets to play this game. So basically it's a spin-off game from the Yakuza franchise. You can play as your favorite characters in these games like Kiryu and Majima, but basically in a Edo Japan setting, and it retells a very famous story from Edo Japan, and it's a very good story, in my opinion, one of the better ones in the Yakuza franchise, and that says a ton because all these games have great storytelling, but it proves on its own to be a good story. And the cool thing is you can play this game without playing any of the other Yakuza games. It can be a standalone experience if you want that. I do recommend you play the Yakuza games first, so you get more enjoyment of the fact that you see all these recognizable characters. I really liked the game, especially from a story perspective, gameplay as well. You can explore this beautiful version. I don't know if it's Kyoto in old style or it's a different town, city in Japan. Can be Kyoto. I can be just totally wrong about that and butcher that setting name. It's a long time ago that I've played it now. It's a few months ago, so forgive me if I'm making some mistakes here. This game has a very interesting combat system. It's a little bit clunky though. You will feel the clunkiness from the Yakuza games. But in my opinion, I really like that clunkiness. So I'm a little bit biased towards it, but there's a very interesting combat system with a card system as well. And you can have your own troops that you recruit yourself, also through side quests, and you can level characters up individually, and you can use them as kind of a power that you can use in combat. It's very unique in its combat system. It still has an action combat system from the Yakuza games, but it implements some tactical stuff, in my opinion, some JRPG elements, and I really liked this game. Check it out if you like historical stuff about Japan especially, or anything towards the Yakuza game. If you're a Yakuza fan, check this out. It is a must-play game. I gave it a 9 out of 10 as well. A lot of 9 out of 10s this year. One game I was very excited about for 2023 in particular was Final Fantasy 16. And I have to say it's a great game, but I did have some issues with it, which I told about in my review for Ace Ice. And I believe this could have scored higher in my top 10 list if it didn't have these issues that I do want to talk about quickly. First of all, what is good about Final Fantasy 16? Well, the story. In particular, the world building is absolutely brilliant. I love the characters, all the backstabbing that happens between the different countries and royals and stuff like that. It's something right out of Game of Thrones, but in a Final Fantasy spin-off way, shall I say, and I really liked that aspect about it. Also, this game is one of the best Final Fantasy games that doesn't do any grinding whatsoever. You can play this game without any grind, so if you are a big hater of JRPGs because of grinding, Final Fantasy 16 has you. You can just use action. If you are at least good at action games, you can get through almost everything on your path. So grinding wise, I also really respect this game. Now, where I negatively talked about the game in particular is the exploration. I think it's very weak, and it's even weaker than 7 Remake, and 7 Remake is also very linear, even though 7 Remake is, by the way, one of my most favorite Final Fantasy games next to the original Final Fantasy 7. But even 16 was much more, shall I say, boring in its exploration. And to be fair, I really enjoyed this game just playing through the story, but there needs to be a bit more to the journey, in my opinion. You have to have side quests, and there are side quests. There are actually some good side quests. Some side quests are also very bad, and they take a little bit too much cues of the MMO structure of Final Fantasy 14. Sorry about that. And of course, it's made by Yoshi P. He was one of the main producers of this game, directors, producers. And there is a lot of MMO influence in Final Fantasy 16 when it comes to the quest structure. There is actually some good writing in some quests, but most of the quests you have in the beginning of the game is fetch me this and deliver me it, and that is just boring as hell. I'm just going to say it as it is. I think they can do a better job at that. And then the second biggest complaint for Final Fantasy 16 is the fact that it is more an action game than an RPG. A lot of RPG elements are missing. Weaknesses towards enemies is a vital thing for me. It doesn't matter any magic that you use or like elemental damage that you do. If you use Ifrit for fire, you do fire damage, or Garuda for wind, you equip Garuda as your weapon, shall I say, but it doesn't have any effect whatsoever against your enemies, what type you are using. And it is far more much in depth in its combat with the mechanics, just as in the action mechanics, because it takes some cues from Devil May Cry. It even has like the counter thing, how well you've done the combat in the corner. I don't know if it's in the corner, but it is at the end results of every battle. My man, I like the Devil May Cry combat. I love the Devil May Cry series, but this is a Final Fantasy game and I want some RPG mechanics in my Final Fantasy game. I think 7 Remake does that just much better, and I hope they can learn some lessons from this game. I still really liked it. I really do, and it's in my top 10, but I also got a little bit disappointed by some small aspects of this game. Now, just if you want to appreciate it on its own for what it is, a very competent, good, great story, great even story with great combat, action combat, amazing boss fights, by the way, great music. You can expect that in Final Fantasy 16, and the presentation as well, all top notch. It's just that I missed some exploration stuff, and I also missed some RPG elements. But still, absolutely great experience and one of the better Final Fantasy experiences I've had in the Final Fantasy series. I do think 7 is better, I do think 10 is better, I do think 9 is better, and maybe even 15. I'm not sure of that. 15 has other problems, but at least 15 has more RPG elements, you know. I'm playing an RPG. Still though, I think this game should have just been a side game, like a spin-off game. Final Fantasy May Cry, something like that, or Battle the Demons, or Battle the Icons, like something like that. Also, the icon battles are amazing. They are great. They are absolutely great. There's so much time and effort put on those icon battles as well, and all of them are different. They were absolutely amazing. No negative thing about the icon battles and the boss battles in general, the music. Yeah, still great game. If you are a Final Fantasy game, I do highly recommend that you at least play it and check it out for yourself to form your own opinion, because every Final Fantasy game is so much different from each other. I do miss the RPG elements. Let me know in the comment section down below, what do you guys think of Final Fantasy 16. I also made a review for Final Fantasy 16 if you guys are interested on Ace Ice. As a standalone game, even I give this a 9 out of 10. It was a great experience. Even though with my flaws, I think the positives really outweigh the negatives.
Humanity has always hunted for knowledge in the unknown. The wonder is, not that the field of stars is so vast, but that we have measured it.
Now for the next entry, I'm going to piss off so many people, and I do not care. Starfield, baby. I actually really like Starfield. I've explained this in multiple videos. I also have a big in-depth review for Starfield on Ace Ice. Thought you can be happy. Your game is on my top 10 list. I did wish though it was higher. I will say that. I'm not going to say here that Starfield doesn't have any flaws. Of course it has. And of course there is hate for the game. I get that. In my opinion, a little bit undeserved hate. But let's get into why I like Starfield. So first of all, when I did my review for it, I explained it as the expense version of Bethesda. So if you guys do know what that TV show is, The Expanse is basically a sci-fi TV show that you can watch, and it's basically about colonizing different planets in the solar system, and you have all these different humans that form their own civilizations, and that's basically also what happens in Starfield. And you have all these different factions. You have the UC and you have the Freestar Collective, which is a faction of their own, and they have a war against each other, and all the lore in Starfield is, in my opinion, very good. I also think the game's story is pretty good. I know a lot of people like to dunk on the writing of Bethesda. I don't really get that, to be fair myself. There have been some really good side quests in the game as well. I will always remember the UC questline with, shall I say, the alien monster thing that takes over humans' brains. If you've played that questline, otherwise it's a spoiler. It's a little bit like the Alien movies with a bit of horror elements that they do in the quest, and I really love it. There is also much more choice and consequence in this game that a lot of people just skimp over, in my opinion. Especially when it comes to the Crimson Fleet storyline. You can get into the Crimson Fleet storyline in a very different way. And I don't think Bethesda gets any praise towards that for some weird reason, because Fallout, we all remember Fallout 4 had not great dialogue options, and they fixed that in Starfield, but no one is talking about it. So very weird to me. And also they were going back to the silent protagonist. I like that as well. You have so many systems. I love the space combat as well in the game. That's very well done. You can pirate other spacecrafts. You can board them. You can make your own ship. Customize it with such an in-depth system. You can put colonies on planets. And of course, I'm not going to say Starfield is a perfect game. Far from it. Let's get into some of the negatives of Starfield. There are a lot of loading screens. A lot of people joke on Starfield for being a loading screen simulator. I actually think that is kind of outrageous, because with next-gen games, all these loading screens are 3 seconds. I know there are a lot of them, but they are very short, so loading screens don't really impact my experience. You know, it's fine to have a game like Spider-Man 2. Spoiler alert for this video. It's really cool to have no loading screens in your open world. Of course, I get that, but it doesn't really hinder my experience of the gameplay at all. I like to see a bit more scope and scale with worlds in general. And Spider-Man is kind of the same map as the first one with just an expansion. Not to say that Spider-Man 2 is bad at any means, because I have it on my list. Spoiler alert, second time. It's not that the loading screen is going to kill my experience. Just to say that to you guys. I think the biggest problem with Starfield is the fact that all these planets are segmented and it's locked behind a loading screen to get to them, and then you land on the planet and everything is procedurally generated. If it is an empty planet, of course, you have planets with main areas and a lot of handcrafted content as well. But that procedural generation stuff, no, Bethesda, don't do that. A lot of people are not interested in all that procedural generation, and that's why I made a video for Elder Scrolls 6. One of my worries for Elder Scrolls 6 is that they want to do a whole Tamriel with procedural generation. Please, Bethesda, I repeat that, don't do that. Just take one region like Skyrim and Oblivion and Morrowind. Just take one or two, if you can handle two. 2 regions, all handcrafted. That's what every Elder Scrolls fan wants. We don't need every region in the game. It's going to only take more time to develop, and you're going to take shortcuts with procedural generation, and we don't want that. We want handcrafted stories, handcrafted scenarios, handcrafted environmental storytelling, and I think that's Starfield's biggest problem. But the thing is, it's also very optional. You don't have to do the procedural generation stuff. You can just do the story and every handcrafted stuff, all the companions, quest lines, and you will still be doing 70 plus hours without even touching the procedural generated stuff. So keep in mind, you can do much more handcrafted content in Starfield than you think. All the procedural generation stuff isn't really a necessary thing. If you want to skip it, you can just skip it. I did that as well. Still though, I think it's a good game. It does improve a lot of stuff from Fallout 76 and even, in my opinion, from Fallout 4 when it comes to questing and storytelling, and the role-playing aspect in Starfield, in my opinion, is just better. But I get the negatives for it as well, so don't worry about that. I get that. I do think it gets a little bit too much hate though. The problem is, all these games for Bethesda, they take so long to develop, and I get the outrage because people are waiting for years upon years, and then you kind of have to deliver, of course. And I'm going to be angry if Elder Scrolls 6 isn't anywhere close to a great game. I'm also going to be angry because I've been waiting already 12 years. 12 plus years for a single player Elder Scrolls game. If you guys are interested about those opinions of mine, I have actually made videos about that. Check my channel out on Get Rekt. I've talked about the problem Bethesda has with the release schedule, as well as my review for Starfield on Ace Ice. Still though, I like the game a lot. I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I do believe the positives outweigh the negatives. And it is a game not everyone will like, I get that. And maybe throughout the years it will go down in rating for me to like an 8 out of 10. But still, I do think this game is an 8 out of 10 at least. So check Starfield out if you're a big fan of sci-fi games. If you are a fan of Bethesda games, just try it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You can play Fallout or Elder Scrolls. But just, I do recommend that you try it at least. Because there is a lot of stuff there in Starfield, especially content-wise, that you might like.
Now go forward, Pride of the Sands.
There is none worthy to be my foe. None!
I found it at last, the 7th source.
Now let's get into the next game, which was actually quite a surprise. Octopath Traveler 2. And I've already played the first one when it came out, and back then I actually did have it on my top 10 list. When was it? Oh, this is probably years ago, 2018, something like that. And now we have the sequel for it on Nintendo Switch, which is a exclusive. I believe you can play it on PlayStation though, not on Xbox. You can also play it on PlayStation if you want, and maybe even PC. So basically, this is a sequel towards Octopath Traveler 1, but these two are not connected in any way with its story. There are some small connection lore-wise, but you can just play this game on its own. It has a whole new cast of characters. That's why it's called Octopath, 8 paths. Genius, I know, right? You are following 8 different characters on their journey, and they have all a good storyline. And I think what Octopath Traveler 2 does better is just the characters. They are much more interesting than the first one in my opinion. Except for the dancer girl in this game. I'm not a fan of her. But all the rest of the characters that I met were great, well written. And it has a great combat system. The combat system in the first one was already really good, and they balanced it a bit better with the boss battles. It has great music. The first one had that as well. It's carrying over to this game. And it even has now a day and night cycle. And the music changes depending on the night and day. And just the detail in this world is beautiful. If you love this 2D HD art style, this is the best version of that art style now that you can play to date. I really recommend it if you are a JRPG fan to try this one out. It's a long game as well, and there is a little bit of grinding though. That was the only negative I have. If you compare it to Final Fantasy 16, that game has almost no grinding. This game does have some grinding, because you have also these 8 characters and you need to level all of them up to require new... For some stories, shall I say, you need a different level to unlock. And that was a little bit tiresome. That's the only negative I have for the game. But still though, the world is beautiful to explore as well. There's a lot of exploration here. You have side quests that you can do. They aren't the best side quests ever, but in my opinion, better than Final Fantasy 16. So, little of a jab right there. Love the world, love the characters, love the music, love the art style, love the combat system, the gameplay. If you are a fan of Octopath Traveler 1 especially, this is a must play. And even if you didn't like Octopath Traveler for some reason, maybe it was the combat or gameplay balancing, try this one out because it is better. Or maybe it is for the story, this one is better. If you aren't a fan of like the 8 characters story structure, then this one isn't going to change your opinion. But if you did like that structure, but you were just disappointed with one aspect like story or gameplay, this is a must play in my opinion. I rated this one a 9.5 out of 10, so check it out. I don't have a review for it, I believe, on Ace Ice. I rated it a 9.5 out of 10. Great game, check it out.
You can't save her. You can't save anyone.
What's gonna happen to me?
I already spoiled one of the games that would be on this list. Well, I actually didn't spoil it, but I said another horror game. Resident Evil 4 Remake. And the thing is, I actually could never get into Resident Evil 4 the original because of its damn tank controls. I hate tank controls in video games. It depends though from game to game, but for a action-based game, no thank you. I finally get now why a lot of people like Resident Evil 4, and in my opinion, I love it now too. It is in fact the best Resident Evil I've ever played, especially gameplay-wise. This game is just amazing. It's tense. It has good level design. It's impactful with its weapons, and the enemies are varied and tests your skills. And it's not overly difficult either, but it's just the right amount of difficulty and balancing. I just really love the gameplay right here. And this is now also my most favorite horror game I've ever played. I'm going to say that right here, which is a 9.5 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. I've never rated a horror game a 10 out of 10 yet. Everything about this game was very well done. Now the story, I will say, it's simple. You go as Leon, go to Spain, rescue like the daughter of the president, I believe. It's a very easy plot. It's not anything too mindfuckery or something like that. But it does go into good lore building, shall I say, even though I wish there was more for lore building on the forefront. That's just a general complaint I have with Resident Evil that will just, I don't think, ever go away, because that's just how Resident Evil is structured. But still, it has a good narrative and pacing in my opinion, especially gameplay pacing wise, it's great. And one thing I actually really hate in video games is backtracking. I don't like backtracking whatsoever, but this game does backtracking very smartly. Like, it's very simple changes actually, but those changes are already good enough to not let it feel repetitive. I liked the music, I liked the graphics, especially loved the gameplay, and the story was decent. It's my most favorite so far Resident Evil, and it's so far my most favorite horror game to date. Also the puzzles that you know from Resident Evil are back in a good way as well. Maybe the escort missions sometimes with President's daughter. I don't remember her name anymore, I'm bad with names, but the escort missions can be a little bit They have actually been improved from the original as well, and they were absolutely doable in my opinion. So check this out. Great game, especially on its gameplay front and level design as well. And it's probably my most favorite horror game of all time. Now we are at the top 3 games of this year for me, and these 3 are very special and probably the best experiences I've had this year. It was very close because Resident Evil 4 Remake could have been on the top 3, and it was on the top 3. It even was the best at 1 at a certain point for this year, but just of how competitive this year is, it got knocked out a little bit to the 4th place. Let's talk about one of my most favorite indie games I have ever played, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. I don't think a lot of guys know this game. I will have to explain. So Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is basically a spiritual successor towards Jet Set Radio. I have gotten into Jet Set Radio recently. I've played Jet Set Radio Future through backwards compatibility on the Xbox 360. Yes, I still have an Xbox 360, and I love the world in this game. The art style is very unique. The soundtrack. This game, by the way, Bomb Bros Cyberfunk and the soundtrack in Jet Set Radio games, they are legendary. Hideki Naganuma, one of my most favorite video game composers, and the same kind of quality soundtrack is in this game. Every track is unique and you can listen to it outside of the game as well. It's a great soundtrack. But basically what you do in this game, you are basically a skater, or not just a skater, you also have rollerblades, you have a mountain bike, and you have this own gang. It's basically you have to challenge other gangs in the storyline to take over the city and become the biggest gang of New Amsterdam, because this game is inspired by the Netherlands. A lot of great Dutch references in this game as well. And the developers, Team Reptile, you can see that they are a big fan of Jet Set Radio. And this is basically the sequel for Jet Set Radio Future we never had. It's full on, it improves mechanics from the Jet Set Radio games. The controls are much better. This game has some of the best damn controls I have ever played in a video game. I'm just going to say it. It's so smooth and precise. And the environment, the level design is so amazing in its art style. It pops up and they have this very unique art style from the Xbox original era. They modernize it and it pops on the screen. You have great menu design as well. Everything about this game, even the story. It's a weird story, I will say that, but still the story really intrigued me, and the world building. I really need a sequel for this game. Team Reptile, if you see this, please do it. I want a sequel for Bomb Bros Cyberfunk, and bring back Hideki Naganuma, because that man makes fire music. Just get enough in the game. That soundtrack is amazing. Or The People, also other great artists like Too Mellow. I will play some music in the background if I can without any copyright, I hope. This game, absolutely the best indie game for me this year. Check it out if you guys are interested in the Jet Set Radio style. If you love Jet Set Radio and you want a spiritual successor, this game is it. It's literally the sequel we never got. It's absolutely a great game. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10, and the fun factor is just very high with this game.
I'm not going to lose him.
We're going to heal the world.
The second best game of 2023 is in fact Spider-Man 2. I absolutely loved this game. I know a lot of people will say it is the same kind of game as the first one. It has the same map, blah blah blah. I do not care. Like, they improve a lot on the story, in my opinion. This is one of the best superhero game stories I've ever played. Venom is menacing in this game. A real villain that you will get intrigued by, shall I say. It even touches on horror aspect. I made a whole review for this game. I will link that in the description down below. The action scenes that you love from the first game. Don't get me wrong, the first game is also very good. And the story in that game is also good. But in my opinion, they step up in the story with this one. And you can play as both Peter and Miles and switch basically between the two whenever you want. And there are some side quests exclusive for Miles. There are quests exclusive for Peter. And the only complaint I do still have with this franchise so far is that the side quests just aren't good enough, especially when you compare them to the Batman Arkham games. They need to improve on that front, I do believe. Arkham games are better on that front, and I do still think Batman Arkham City is the overall best superhero game of all time, but this one is second, very close to it. Especially, I think, story-wise, it's even better than Batman Arkham City. So, how they did the characters for Peter, the struggles they have to go through in the story, developing their characters, Venom, how Venom develops, how Peter is throughout the story. He changes into something I can't really no, I can't really go into spoilers, but also even Miles, how they develop his character. All the story that's packed in only 15 hours. This game is only 15 hours. I thought I was playing a game that was 30 hours long. Just how much is packed at every front in the story, and it continuously goes further, and maybe the pacing is a little bit too fast in my opinion. They could slow down a little bit to explain some stuff in the story, but still, this is a absolutely great first attempt what they have here for this game. I explained this as well in the review in depth. And at the gameplay front as well, this is the best traversal in a video game you will see. The web swinging is still fun, but now they added the gliding mechanic as well. It's just pure fun. And next to that fun, there is also a good combat system there as well. And every Spider-Man has exclusive techniques, stuff like that. And there is also a shared skill tree for Miles and Peter together. I hope for the next game they can improve on the side quests a bit. But I do think there is so much development going into the main storyline that a lot of just development resources are going towards that, because you can see that on how well paced this game is. So much story that there's packed in only 15 hours. It's just mind-blowing to me. So yeah, I gave Marvel's Spider-Man 2 a 9.5 out of 10. If you are a Spider-Man fan, it's a must-play. If you are a superhero fan, it's, in my opinion, a must-play. If you are a PlayStation fan, it's a must-play. If you are just a fan of open-world action-adventure games, shall I say, I do think you should also check it out. I had some negatives on the side quests, but that's really it. And man, this game is just a joyride from beginning to end.
Okay, let's go!
But you are not alone.
Link. You are our final hope.
And now, the official game of the year for Mr. Maximum for me. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think you guys can see it very well because it's badly light. I hope you can see it like this. It's a steelbook. It's an absolute masterpiece. And it's even an improvement from Breath of the Wild. Let me explain. Breath of the Wild kind of feels now a little bit like a beta version. Like I'm not gonna lie. To be fair, there are some stuff in Breath of the Wild that are good as well, just on its standalone, especially when it comes to the powers you have. I do believe Tears of the Kingdom has a little bit too much building, in my opinion. The whole game is centered on building stuff, but still, all the stuff you can do in this game is just mind-blowing. Everywhere you go through in the open world, if you go from A to B, there will be something you see over there and you will be immediately distracted. There is just so much content in Tears of the Kingdom and all of it is fun, in my opinion. Even the story, one of my biggest complaints for Breath of the Wild was its storytelling, on how they only use the memories. This game still does that, but in my opinion, structure-wise, it's much better than the first game. And it even has plot reveals, stuff like that are very well done. It's not the best story ever, I will say that, compared to maybe some other games, but I think it's a very big improvement from the first game, story-wise already. Another thing that I complained about in the original Breath of the Wild was the dungeons. Basically, you have the beasts, mechanical beasts, big gigantic beasts that had dungeons in them. There were 4 of them in the last game in Breath of the Wild, and they were very repetitive. That was one of my biggest complaints. And they totally, well, not totally, they fixed it a lot with actual dungeons, but kind of a half step, because there are still only 4 dungeons, I believe, or 5. There are 5. I do think they could have even gone further a little bit, and that's why I'm going to keep Ocarina of Time as my most favorite Zelda game, but then Tears of the Kingdom immediately second. The journey that you go through to these dungeons, the journey alone is very important. I will always remember the fire temple in this game. I will always remember when you have to dive into the volcanic mountain and then you have to go through the dark depths and you don't see anything in there. It's totally pitch dark, and that was amazing. This whole dark depths is one of the best dungeons I've played in a video game to date, and everything is dark and you will need to have to navigate it yourself with these bright bloom seeds that you throw, and you slowly get to expand the depths, shall I say, and you see those towers. Just when you get to the bloom tower, shall I say, you can activate it, and then there's a lot of light, and progressively you unlock the whole map. And what I really love about Tears of the Kingdom is its rewards as well. Every quest has a good reward, like an armor set that's unique, which I'm missing from Starfield, which Tears of the Kingdom does better. You always get rewarded somehow, and I also love how its gameplay discovery is intertwined with the lore. The more you discover, the more side quests you do, the more you learn about Tears of the Kingdom's world and how it progressed from Breath of the Wild. Yes, I know it's the same map as Breath of the Wild. To be fair, I don't care, because a lot of stuff on the surface level is changed. As an example, towns in the game that fully changed visually, how you progress through them. There are also a lot of new areas as well, on the surface even, but also you have the Sky Islands now as well that you can explore. And you have the Dark Depths, and there are quests for the Dark Depths as well. You have quests on the surface as well. So many, in fact. This game is chock full of content. Also, Ganondorf is in this game, spoiler alert, very famous villain in the Zelda franchise. And this is probably the best, hands down, best rendition of Ganondorf I've seen. The boss fight you have against him, which I won't spoil at the end, is amazing as well. This game's presentation, gameplay is all 10 out of 10. I think story-wise it's like a 8 out of 10, but just all the positives together makes this game a 10 out of 10. The graphics, even though it's for a Switch, the fact that the Switch can handle this as well is just technically mind-blowing. For a Switch game, the graphics are very good in my opinion. Check it out, Tears of the Kingdom. If you have not played it yet for some weird reason, I don't know why. If you're a Zelda fan, it's a must-play title. Now, of course, if you didn't like the style of Breath of the Wild, I don't think Tears of the Kingdom will fix that for you. So you either like it or you don't. But if you liked what was in Breath of the Wild, this is just an improved, a better version of Breath of the Wild in every way. I highly recommend this game for you guys. Also, the building mechanic in this game is so wild. Even though, yes, sometimes there is a little bit too much building and you can get a little bit tired of that. Everything is just so unique, and there isn't really anything like this in a single player game with a narrative. That's the thing. You have survival crafting games that have a lot of building mechanics, like a Minecraft, something like that. But let's be honest, Minecraft is not a story-focused game at all. This is a story-focused game that have all these gameplay mechanics, and you have also the fusion mechanic that you can use to make your weapons stronger. It helps a little bit with the weapon durability if you did not like that system. The weapon durability is still here though. I don't think it does too much for the weapon durability, but I already liked the weapon durability in Breath of the Wild because you are forced to switch up your weapons, and the game provides a ton of weapons everywhere, and so you never run out of weapons in any way. The survival mechanics as well, progressing through the open world when there are weather effects, when it's raining, it will affect the environment. When there's thunder and you have metallic items, it's the same from Breath of the Wild. It's all carried over. All that good stuff, shall I say, is carried over to Tears of the Kingdom in just a bigger way. And that's why Tears of the Kingdom is my game of the year for 2023. What is your game of the year? Let me know in the comment section down below. Let's have a discussion on that. Thank you guys for watching as always. I would really appreciate it if you guys would like this video. There's a lot of editing on here for this video, so I would really appreciate it if you give it a like if you like it. Of course, you can also dislike it if you dislike it, but that would make me sad. No, I'm kidding, you can dislike it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more gaming news. That's what I usually do towards the biggest single-player games, leaks and rumors, especially for PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox, you name it, for all the big platforms. And of course, visit my social media in the description down below. Also the reviews that are tied to the games on this video. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.